What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today I'm going to talk about faith, right? A little bit about my faith journey. It is a topic that has come up on this channel before. It's one that I'm very comfortable talking about, and I actually enjoy it. And it's something that I've been kind of hearing in some of the corners of YouTube, right? And reading in some of the comments. Recently, it was said that I left prison with my balls in a Bible. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't care to know. Just kind of an odd description. But what I'm gonna do for the rest of this week, Monday I talked about my toxic relationship with alcohol, right? And I know that video kind of inspired a lot of stuff with people. Today I'm gonna talk about my faith journey. Tomorrow I'm gonna talk about higher education. Uh, Both of those things are instrumental in me becoming the person that I have since getting out of prison. And and then Friday, some other kind of foundational thing. I don't know, maybe parenthood or something. You guys give me some suggestions, and I'll kind of keep going with that, sort of the building blocks of what makes me who I am today. Community work, maybe it'll be one of them. Legal work, right? So, and then on top of that, like I said, I'm doing 2 videos a day. This one's coming out a little bit late because I took melatonin last night, which was amazing, but also got me a little behind schedule. So I might just go live this evening instead of recording another video. We'll see. I'm also looking at some of the analytics, and videos kind of step on each other. So I don't know. We'll figure it out how that goes. But just to kind of give you guys a glimpse into what's coming up, I will talk about my case, which I've done before. But I'll do it again. That's fine. And uh, and yeah, we'll go from there. Other little topics as they come up. So the faith journey. Um, Again, it's stuff I've spoken about before. I am not a religious gang member, so this is my experience. This was my route. Um, I respect the fact that different people have different journeys. I have read about other religions and belief systems. Uh, participated in Muslim services. I've done sweats before on reservation with native brothers, and so it varies. All very spiritual experiences. But this is, again, my journey, right? So growing up, I was not I wasn't involved in church or religion or that kind of stuff. I remember being in prison, and there was a bunch of folks who were families were Jehovah's Witnesses, and other people that were like, church kids, and then kind of took a left. That's not my experience. I was baptized a few times as a kid. I just think that the various adults in my life knew that I was going to need as much help as I could get. One of the ones I remember is a Baptist church right there on Raymond Street in Visitation Valley in San Francisco, where my grandmother had gone for a long time, where my mom got married a couple times. And but I know that there was others, right? So I didn't grow up though learning about God really. You hear God talked about, but it really just wasn't a part of my experience. And I remember as a kid at various times thinking, if God existed, he must hate me, right? Because look at all the stuff I got to go through. And this at a very young age. So I just wasn't concerned with it. Now, fast forward many years, I'm sitting in prison. My mom, who, has a history of addiction and whatnot, while I was locked up, she had sort of gotten her life on track. She was going to church. She found, fellowship there and really got involved, right? She was in networks with other women whose sons or brothers or husbands or whatever were incarcerated. She got involved in some levels of activism, right? Challenging the building of some of the new prisons. And so she would come to visits, right? It's amazing. Like, she was not dependable whatsoever when I was a child. She was very absent and unstable. Yet when I got incarcerated, that lady came to visit me at every prison I went to. As far south as Corcoran, as far north as Pelican Bay, and she made the sacrifices necessary, and so I appreciate her for that, right? But she would come and she would talk about faith a little bit, and I'm kind of mildly engaged because it's important to her, and I'm glad to hear that her life is moving forward. But I had no application in my life, right? Because I'm incarcerated and I'm affiliated, right? So what do I care? And I get to the Corcoran Shoe. right? I get to the courtroom shoe, and she decides on her own that she's gonna send me a Bible, right? So sitting in the cell one day with Carlitos from San Jose, who my interview with him that we did like at this point a couple years ago. I'm gonna re-upload that as well. I know I've been talking about it, but just kind of working on it, and so that'll be coming out again soon. Shout out to him. But we're cellies, and they come to the cell door, right? When you get a book, they come to you and they're like, "Hey, here you got a book." I'm like, "The fuck is this?" And I wasn't expecting it, right? My only interest in Bibles throughout my time in prison, honestly, was if we were on lockdown and we ran out of rolling papers. You know, I did time at a in an era where you could still smoke in the California Department of Corrections, so you could buy tobacco and lighters and papers on canteen. And sometimes on lockdowns, we wouldn't get a chance to go to the store. You run out of papers. You're trying to smoke a cigarette, and the paper in Bibles is thin, like a zigzag. And so we try to find spots that like didn't say God or like that made a big difference. And that was really my only interest, before that. But I wasn't smoking anymore. So she sends me this Bible. And I'm like, what do I need this for? And you can only have, I think it's 7 or 10. I don't remember now, but you can only have a certain amount of books in your property at a time. And so if you get new books, you have to trade in an old one, and the COs have a property sheet of the books that they know that you have, right? That you've had sent to you. And so they're like, hey, here you go. You got to turn in a book. I ain't turning in no damn book. What are you talking about? And so I sent it back, right? I sent it back because I had no interest in it. And I wanted to keep the other books that I had that I did like. So that was that. She came to visit, and she wasn't all butthurt about it. She was just like, "Hey, what happened?" I was like, "Ma, I can only have so many books, and I'm trying to keep books that I could use. You know what I mean? I need this. Like, it's cool for you, ain't got nothing to do with me." So that kind of sets the stage, right? Gives you guys an idea of my thoughts on religion. I wasn't anti. I just wasn't my thing. Now, fast forward, right? Fast forward again, and I'm in the Pelican based shoe program, and I'm watching the TV, right? Because that's what you do in the shoe. So I'm watching the TV, and there's all kinds of. I would watch like the Sunday news programs, Meet the Press, and ABC, and you get to watching all kinds of stuff in there that you probably wouldn't if you were in the streets. And I was very involved with like news and politics and current events. I tried to stay updated. I got a bunch of newspapers and all that. So I was watching these programs, and there were these people that would come on these political talk shows, but they were religious, right? And I would trip out because they all claim to have read the same book, right? All claim to believe the same thing, but they reserve their harshest criticisms for each other, right? And I'm like, I don't get it. I've read a lot of books in my life, and sure, people have different interpretations, but this is crazy because you're supposed to be reading this most important book in your life, but they read the same book, and you guys call each other the devil. The math ain't mathing, and so I was intrigued. And I told my mom, hey, and now in hindsight, I think there was a spiritual component at play, right? Because I believe in that stuff now. But where my mind was consciously at the time was, hey, you still got that Bible? And she's like, well, you don't have that one. I got it through catalog, but I can get you one. And I said, sure. And I just wanted to read it for informational purposes. I'd never read the Bible before, and I was just curious. Like, what does this say? What is all the hype about? Right. And so she's orders me another Bible. It's a student Bible, like an NIV student Bible, and that's probably the fastest piece of mail I ever got in the Pelican Bay shoe, right? Like, it got there quick. And so I cracked it open and I started reading at page one, because that's what you do when you start to read a book, right? Wasn't even really clear on what all the little numbers were. Like, every now and then there's just a number in the corner, and so I started reading, and I'm in a cell by myself. I am active. We didn't have that language back then, but I'm very much in the mix. Not in the mix in a leadership sense, because I'm in the soup program that is way before end of hostilities and people getting let out. So leadership in there looks a little different, right? And I wasn't at that level, but I'm there, doing my thing. And so I'm reading, and it proves to be a pretty interesting book, right? And um following along, and I kind of start to get this idea, message, if you will, right? God, this is Old Testament God, right? This isn't hippie Jesus, even though there's really no hippie Jesus in the Bible, but this is this is Old Testament God. And it's like, hey, I set you guys apart for my own purposes, right? So I can show off through you. So I can demonstrate to other people how good it is when you're rocking on my team. And I look out for you, I bless you, I make sure that you guys are victorious in battles. And yet every now and then, you J cats fall for the next little shiny object, right? Like, oh, that God looks prettier, or this over here, and you get distracted and don't give me any credit, right? You take all the credit for yourself and decide you're gonna link up with other teams. And so God would get mad, right? And this is very much a paraphrase. But again, how I'm seeing it, God would get mad and be like, you know what? Fuck you, you know, and knock down a bunch of people, right? He what the kids say, lay down a demo, right? He would lay down demos, and and the people, the Israelites, they would turn around and be like, man, my bad, my bad, my bad, my bad. Okay, we're gonna get on track. We're gonna, when we come back out to the yard, it's cool. DP worked. Um, and they would continue like that, and it was this repeating cycle. And I'm like, man, if I was God, I would feel that way too, right? Like I'm looking out for you, and I'm doing all this stuff, and you want to go link up with other teams, or give credit elsewhere, or you get so arrogant to think that you can do this without me. I was like, this kind of makes sense, right? So God was, to a degree, the God that I was learning about as I'm reading was, to a degree, relatable, you know. Um, so I keep reading, right? That, like, this story has me intrigued, and I read word by word, right? Even the long family history, genealogy shit, like all of it, right? And something I noticed, as God would kind of punish folks or lay these demos down or whatever, he never annihilated everybody. You know, there was always a remnant. There was always somebody left, right? Or a couple people, or a family, or, whatever. Noah, the ark, like, he never took out everybody. There was always somebody there who he was like, hey, I'm gonna work with you, right? I'm gonna work with you, and we're gonna get this machine back on track. And it's not because they were perfect, right? Everybody was flawed. Everybody was messing up. Everybody was out of pocket. So then I'm like, well, how did he pick, right? And there's the visual of the ground splitting, and all the people that are on this side is game over, and all the people that are on this side get to live and see another day, right? Let's see if you get some act right. And it got me thinking, right, about my own life, and about how many times the ground had split, in my community, and in my family, and in my environment, and yet I always stayed standing, right? People who I love very much lost their lives before I went to prison. Uh, they were good people, right? They were better than me, better at doing stuff, just all around better human beings in my book. Yet their days ended before mine did. Uh, there was people, doing more time, right? Time that I deserve to do, and yet I get to go home, and people I love and care about don't. And not because I'm better than them, right? It's just a circumstance of who gets caught for what, and what you get sentenced to, So it kind of got me thinking, how do I keep ending up standing? And I don't really know how to pray, right? Like, it it felt weird to me. Um and so, but I would think, which, in hindsight, I think my thinking was, eh, in a sense, kind of praying, right? But wasn't like on the ground, hands, folded, all that stuff. It wasn't dramatic. I was like, why? Why, And the answer, if you will, that I got, and it wasn't a bright light in the cell and the doors opened up, and, oh, Jesus, right? Like this. I've heard some people talk about their experiences like that, and I don't take that away from them, or challenge that, right? Everybody has their own. That wasn't mine, you know. Probably would scare the shit out of me if it did happen. But I, what I understood from that is, as long as you're alive, you have a choice, right? You never know when you're not going to be alive anymore. None of us know. When your moment comes, your moment comes. Now you can do some shit to fast track that, to increase the odds, but you really never know. But one day it's going to happen. But it's not about good and bad, right? Life ain't that simple. It's about choices. And as long as you're alive, you have a choice. That may sound kind of foolish to some of you guys. I had never considered that I had options. I don't want to say never, but in my adult life, I didn't really consider that I had options, that I had choices, that my destiny was not already written for me by the choices that I had already made. And so that was powerful, and looking back now, almost 20 years out of prison, with just over 19 years out of prison, that was transformative. And it kept me reading, right? It kept me reading. And for those that are interested in the prison and the politics and everything else, I'm still doing my thing. I'm still incarcerated, right? Um, but I'm just reading it myself, right? And I'm intrigued. And so I keep going, and there's this talk of, spirit this and spirit that, and I started watching some of the church programs on BET, right? In Pelican Bay, you get BET. I think it's the only prison in California where you get that. And they got the Sunday the church stuff, and it's Creflo Dollar, and a lot of it's just poverty pimping, right? Um, but they got their message, they're doing their thing, and I would watch, and I would see these people pray, and they were dramatic, right? Like, they looked like they were having a time of their lives, and they're dancing and they're shaking, and I'm like, I don't feel like that. Like, when I talk to God, that don't happen, right? Uh, Maybe I'm not doing it right. I don't know. And mind you, I don't have, it's not like I could talk to my neighbor, right? About, these things. And not because I was embarrassed or ashamed. Um, Probably on some level, there was a bit of that. I know in Corcoran, when that Bible came through the door, there was a little bit of like, how's my cellie going to view me? Right? Because this is a person with status and power, but also a friend, and it came out of nowhere. So I was surprised by it, and I seen the surprise in his face, and so there was some of that at play back then. But now, here in the privacy of my own cell, it wasn't like, I don't think, too much of shame or whatever. It's just those weren't conversations that were had. I had never talked about God with none of these dudes next to me. Like, these are all people that are very heavily affiliated and been sitting back here for decades, and it's just not a big topic of conversation, right? It's just not. And so I'm kind of thinking through some of the stuff myself. My mom would come like once a month, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's going on here? Right? This is a twist. And so, but I would, again, all this talk of spirit, and in particular, on BET, you're the Holy Ghost and the Holy Spirit. And I was like, I don't get, what is that? Right? I hadn't made it that far in the book yet. I guess you could say I was kind of Jewish before I was Christian, right? Because I hadn't got to the Jesus part. I was still in the Old Testament part. So I look in the back of the book and I look up spirit, right? It's a study Bible, and so you can go look at topics in the back and that kind of stuff. That wasn't something I wanted to do originally, because I just want to read the book like a book. But now I'm like, let me see where it talks about this at. And spirit comes up, and it's these names, right? And John and Paul, and I don't know who these people are, right? So that doesn't help me. But I see Romans. I was like, Romans? I know a little bit about history, right? A little bit about Rome. That's dope. There's the Romans are in the Bible, and they're talking about the spirit. Let's see what they're talking about. And so I skipped ahead, right? And I read the book of Romans, and that's where I kind of understood, or started to understand, the Jesus part, you know? And I was like, okay. And it was funny because it answered questions that I had posed before, you know, every now and then you have a celly and they, you know, do you believe in God or whatever? And so we'd have little conversations, but my cellies didn't really like talking about faith with me. You know, I wasn't a very inviting person on that. And I'm argumentative and I'll debate and I'll question and I'm a facts and science guy, right? And so even back then I was, you know, I was a facts guy, like what are we really getting at here? And so they it probably wasn't easiest to talk to. But that would come up, you know, at times. And I'm like, look, so Jesus comes, and if you don't believe in Jesus, you go to hell. So we just annihilate the gazillions of people that have lived before, right? This all the indigenous folks from around the world, all in hell. All these people in these other countries that haven't heard about Jesus, because this little Jesus thing happened over here in a corner of the world. All the folks that never heard about it, lake of fire. Like, get out of here. That shit doesn't make any sense. You can't say that that's true and also that this is some loving God that loves everybody. That's a contradiction that doesn't reconcile. Romans kind of address that, right? Of like, hey, it's what do you do with that voice that's in your head that's guiding you right from wrong? You know what you should do. You know what you shouldn't. Do you listen to that voice? Right? Because that's God trying to talk to you. What do you do with nature when you look around and you see the trees and the mountains and the rocks and all this other stuff? Do you sit back like, oh, look what I made? Right? Do you view the created world around you as if you are the creator of it? Because yeah, it's kind of out of pocket, right? Or do you acknowledge there's something else at play here? It's a mystery, it's a wonder. I don't know what it is, but I didn't create these mountains and rivers and streams, right? So something did. And that's not a person. That's not the king. That's not the homie. That's something else. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Right? That kind of makes sense. And then it is, hey, have you heard about this Jesus cat? And if so, what have you done with that information? Right? And these are kind of like the three-prong thing that Paul's putting out there, right, to the Romans in terms of answering some of the same stuff that I had. And I was like, okay, it's kind of again, we're kind of making sense, right? I'm not saying I agree with every Christian. I'm saying this is my journey, right? And it's unorthodox. I communicate a little bit different. I get that. Um, but that's the whole point of these videos, right? To kind of give you guys a glimpse into what makes me who I am, you know? And I would love to hear, you know, obviously your comments and your feedback, like what makes you who you are, right? So I keep reading and that's that, right? I give my life to Christ. Again, not in a dramatic fashion, you know. Still don't feel like them cats on BT when I pray. I'll be honest. I that's just maybe I'm too reserved for it. So I don't know. I don't know what it is. Um, but that's not quite my experience. But I do feel that I know, right? You could not convince me otherwise that I have a relationship with God, and that relationship with God started in that prison cell in the Pelican Bay Soup program, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Right? That was a factor. That and higher education, right, which I'll get to tomorrow. Stay tuned. Were very significant factors in me deciding, hey, when I come home, I don't like I want to try to stay out of prison. I don't want to carry this banner out to the streets. While I am in prison, I'm going to be in prison. Right. And anybody that's really done time, you guys know this. Every now and then you'll run across or you'll see situations where somebody forgets they're in the joint, right? And bad things can happen to them. Like you're not free until you're driving off of prison property, right? And so you need to stay on your toes. Now, granted, it's the Pelican Bay Zoo. It's probably the safest fucking prison environment in the state of California, and I know that might boggle some minds, right? Because all the stuff you hear about it, which is true, but very small area. You have no human contact with anybody. If you don't have a celly, anybody, you know, unless the doors pop or somebody hits you with a spear or something, you gotta really piss somebody off for that kind of thing to happen. Um, but I didn't. God didn't call me to go debrief, right? God didn't call me to go telling the fellas. God didn't call me to do it. This was my own journey, my own transformation, right? And I was within that last year of incarceration, and in that last year, again through the spiritual walk and through higher education in particular, I started to envision a life outside of prison that could be different, and started to have hope. Hope is the game changer, right? For any of us in any walk of life, no matter what the fuck we got going on. Hope is powerful. And I had none before that. So I was going with the flow, right? There was no expectation, anything different. So that is where that, element comes in. Now I come home, I'm open about this, right? I was on the chaplaincy board for the juvenile hall in San Mateo County for fucking years. Was doing Bible studies in juvenile hall. My Bible studies were a little different than the other 65, 70-year-old folks that are volunteering from their little churches. Um, and I'm not gonna say better or worse, but it was different, right? Our conversations looked different because I have a better understanding of the culture and the challenges for certain demographics of people. Created programs, everything else. So I've been in faith rooms all over the place, right? And had these conversations and with young and old alike, and had mentors and been honored to be able to be a mentor, right, to folks. And have I always kept my way? Have I always kept the same discipline? That high pro glow you sort of get when you first come home from prison? No, no, I have fallen short, right? Absolutely. Um, but is it real? Yeah, yeah, for me, sure. And and again, I'm appreciative of it, and so that's it's my journey, man. And of course, I mean, I can go on forever. This is a 27-minute video already. So if you guys got questions or whatever, that's fine, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I'm sure this topic will come up again. It comes up in the lives sometimes. Lives. If you guys don't tap into those, a lot of times I take them off of public fairly soon after they're done, uh, just because it clogs up the channel. Then people come to see what kind of videos, and they see a bunch of lives, and they don't really engage with them, and so it gives a different impression of how my channel works. But I have taken extended breaks from YouTube in the 3, 4, whatever years that I've been on here. Right, I've gone months without uploading, and then I'll do lives, but I won't put videos. And so, anyways, I take the lives down. But if you get a chance to tap into them or catch a replay on one, those conversations go in a million different directions, right? And folks watching will tell you we might talk about world politics, we might talk about religion, we might talk about mental health, we might talk about prison, we might talk about YouTubers, we might talk about parenting. Like it's kind of whatever people bring up and wherever the conversation goes. But so none of this is going to be new to some of you guys that have been watching the channel for a while. But yeah, there's that journey in a nutshell. So for those, I've seen some places, and like I said, there's been some comments, and it's funny because a lot of what people know, they know from shit that I've already said, but then they twist it and repackage it and put it out there as if they're putting me on blast for something. I can't be exposed for foul stuff. Not because I've never done foul stuff. I mean, I never told, I never locked up. Like, this just is what it is. But I'm a transparent person. I'll tell you about myself, right? I'll tell you about doing drugs on a yard in Solano. I'll tell you about this spiritual transformation. I'll tell you about just whatever, right? Different yards that I've been on, and where I go. It doesn't interest me to come on here and lie to you guys. That doesn't seem, that for me, this doesn't make a lot of sense, right? That's not how I've been. Uh my journey's been my own, and I can't claim somebody else's journey, and I can't pretend like my journey's been anything different than what it is, and it makes me who I am today. And at 47, I'll be 48 next month. Am I where I want to be in life? No, I probably never will be. Right? It's a journey. But in my right mind, am I proud of the person that I've become? Fuck yeah, yeah. Um, and And I think most of you watching should be too, right? Probably some little J-Cats out there. You might want to look yourself in the mirror. But we made it, man. We made it. For those that have done time, for those that have been through the ringer, for those that have been strung out or whatever the case is, we've made it and we'll continue to make it. And so, anyways, help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about in the comments. And I'll definitely take that in consideration. I got a whole list of things that I'm already planning on talking about, but I'm flexible. We'll figure it out. You guys take care.